Hi, welcome to Fork in the Loaf. My name is Heather. I'm really frustrated with myself right now. So I just did yesterday, I cut and dehydrated one of those big bluish grayish pumpkins. And here it is. This is it. I powdered it. One of the things that I did was I didn't actually record the cutting and cleaning of it that I thought I had showed you. So I took my big old German sweet potato squash, which weighed 25 pounds, you guys, and I showed you cutting and cleaning it, and I think I forgot to record it. I'll have to go back and look, but I think I missed the record button. So this time I know for sure you're recording. I don't know if you can see all of that squash, but that was that big long orange squash sitting on my counter. It's a German sweet potato squash, very meaty, very similar to the pumpkin taste. I actually kind of like these better. I do have about 15 pumpkin that need to be done, so I'm just going to show you how I do this real quick because this is my third time, but I do have all these to do. So see the stem that's on here? I'm just going to bang it on the corner of my counter and then just toss it. And then I'm going to make sure you clean them, and then I'm going to take my big burly knife, and you want to make sure you have, before I do that, underneath my cutting board, which is a mess from doing this one, I have a damp cloth. You really want a damp cloth there because it really helps sturdy your cutting board so it's not slipping and sliding everywhere, and you really don't need your cutting board slipping around underneath you when you're trying to cut something like this. They are hard. Matter of fact, I don't even know if I can get this in there. And they're slippery. And it doesn't help that I have goop on here from the last one I cleaned. Okay, so this time I know for sure that I am videoing. And what I'm doing, so this is all the seeds from my German sweet potato squash. I'm gonna feed the innards to my chickens. I'm gonna do that same thing with these pumpkins. I'm gonna save the seeds. And if you notice, the blue pumpkin that I had was really thick. I mean, I think on one side it was even thicker than this, and on the other side it was more like, probably more like this or this. This is a pumpkin, and if you look at the difference, I mean, the meat on this is massive. The meat on this is about medium. And these taste very similar to pumpkin. And the reason I want to save my seeds is because I'm going to powder them, and then I'm going to dehydrate them, and then I'm going to put them in my Vitamix, and I'm going to blend them until they make a powder. Pumpkin seeds have something in them called cucurbin or something like that. And it is a natural dewormer, and with having chickens and dogs, if I put some of that powdered pumpkin seed over their food on a regular basis, it will give them actually quite a bit of nutrition. There's a lot of nutrition in pumpkin seeds. They are a powerhouse. Pumpkin in itself is a really big, it's a powerhouse of nutrition. So I'm gonna take I use a canning lid because it's got a nice sharp edge. My hands are getting slippery. But I just scrape out all of this goop. So what I wanna do is I'm going to put on a parchment lined cookie sheet, because I like easy cleanup. I'm going to put a couple of halves onto into the oven at about 400 for 1 hour. The blue pumpkin that you'll see later in this video took an hour and a half to cook. It was really thick, so I'm wondering if these might take just a little bit longer. I know that you can buy these chunks in the grocery store like this. It's one of our favorite squashes, so I will be saving some of that for dinner tonight. And that's it. Now, I've never done the dehydrating and powdering the seeds. This is my first year doing it. But I have like 15 pumpkins, and I had the German sweet potato squash, and then I had a blue pumpkin. So figured it's a good year to try doing this. I'll get enough pumpkin seed powder to make a difference. Okay, so I have a lot of work ahead of me. I'm going to show you the rest of the video that shows you what I do with all this pumpkin. I'm going to put some in the oven at about 400 degrees. I also have a turkey roaster that I'm going to put the rest of it in so I can get it all cooked at once and then just start the dehydrating process in my dehydrator. So I'll be back in just a minute with the other video. So I actually had to cook this pumpkin for about an hour and a half. It's really thick. In order for this really thick side to get done, it took a little bit longer. But you know that it's done when you go and stick a knife or a fork in there and it's super easy to get in and out. Another thing I really like about it is to peel it is really easy. This is some really thick skin. I'm gonna just, I haven't quite figured out how I want to do this. I've seen some people stick it in their blenders and add a little water to it so that it flows evenly on your trays. And I just feel like it's kind of an extra step that makes a lot of dishes. And I'm going to try and avoid that. And I think, and I've done this once before, but it was like last year and it was my first time doing it. And I cannot remember exactly how I did it. That's part of the reason I like videoing things. So what I want to start, I'm going to try. I don't understand why you would want to go through the trouble of pureeing it now when you're going to put it in the blender to powder it anyway. So to me, that's just an added step that I like to try to avoid. So I am going to skin this first. I was watching one gal who she would steam her pumpkin so that she could keep her skin and blend that in there with the puree. And this skin is so thick and hard. I don't really want this in there. And it's kind of crisp. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's pretty firm stuff. So now that I have all the skin off of this, I think how I'm going to do this, let's see if I can get it so you can see everything I'm doing. I think what I would like to do is thinly slice this, and I'll do it by hand because I'm trying to avoid dishes. And I'm going to do about, not quite a 1/4 inch thick. I don't know what that is. Maybe 1/8 of an inch thick. And the reason I'm doing it this way, well, I'm trying to avoid dishes. And as long as they're all pretty close to the same thickness, they are going to dehydrate just fine. And I think, you know, some might be a little thinner and some might be thicker. But man, I do not want to have to wash my blender twice. And I don't understand pureeing it first. I don't remember doing that last time. I think I did it, I think this is how I did it last time too. So, or at least I remember slicing it. One of the hardest things when you're dehydrating is this part. The rest of it's really easy. But this part can be tedious and time consuming. Tray 1 is done. I'm going to go load this up. I'll be right back. Part of the reason I want to powder it. So I'm going to dehydrate it, then I'm going to blender it and make it into a powder. And that is going to, I'll use that in soups, chilies. I can make pumpkin pie with it. I'll do something with what I do with it. How does that sound? I'll add it to my smoothies, my chia pudding. If I do a pumpkin pie chia pudding, yogurt, make it into like a pumpkin pie yogurt, overnight oats to make pumpkin pie overnight oats. Anything that you would use canned pumpkin in, you can use this in. I would not reconstitute it and have it for dinner per se, like just like a plate of squash like you would with this. Because it will have a different consistency. But to add it to things, would be beautiful. So I'll be back when I'm done loading all this and getting it all trayed up to get it started. I think what I will do is once I get it all started, I will come back when it's all finished, probably tomorrow. Okay, so it is now 9 o'clock in the morning the next day, and I started this yesterday, so it probably took, it didn't take 24 hours. Well, we got this in yesterday afternoon. It wasn't 9 o'clock at night, so it was, I probably could have checked it sooner. I just let it go from the time I started until I got up this morning and took care of some other things. So I've got my Vitamix and my Vitamix mixer here, and I'm going to take all of these little pieces, and this is why I like parchment paper. It just comes right off of it and it dries it fairly fast. But they're all pretty hard. There's a little bit of leatheriness, but I think that's okay. A lot of natural sugars in there that will cause it to be leathery. I don't really think I can get it any drier though. I think what I'll do is I'll powder it, and maybe I'll dry it a little bit more after that. We'll see. So I'm just going to keep pulling all this stuff off. And I'm going to put it all in here, and I will come back when we get to the next step. Sometimes your paper can stick to the pumpkin. Just break the pumpkin or move it, bend it, and it'll come right off. It's just when it dries, it kind of creases up and it'll grab the paper sometimes. You know, as I'm lifting this, I'm realizing I probably didn't even need the parchment paper because I had that in the big chunks. If I would have done the puree, this would have been probably smarter, but yeah. I have to tell you, even though I didn't need to use parchment paper, I love the cleanup. I don't have to go through and wash this now. So I just kind of let that go until I quit hearing the chunks clicking against the blades. And so I'm gonna let this sit here because I don't know if you could see that, but there is a lot of powder floating around in the air. Now that my pumpkin powder's had a chance to kind of quit flying everywhere, I'm gonna write on my jar here with a Sharpie, pumpkin. And then I'm gonna put today's date, which is, well, I'm gonna put the month and the year. So it's November of 2021. I really wanna make sure I keep as much of this pumpkin powder as I can, because every little bit counts, right? So at this point, you could, and I might have to put this out on one of those trays and maybe stick it back in the dehydrator for a little bit. It feels sticky, and that could really just be because of all the sugars in this particular pumpkin, because it is sweet. It even smells sweet. Wish you could smell this. Okay, so now that I have this done, I kind of want to try showing you the reconstitution of it. So there's a few different ways that I really like to use this stuff. One, I love it in my chia pudding. I love a pumpkin pie chia pudding. And so I will take, well, let's make one. We have to factor in that the chia seeds are going to take a lot of fluid and the pumpkin is going to take a lot of fluid. So I use these pint jars that have, I don't know if you can see, but it has like little measuring lines right there. So I'm going to fill it to the 3/4 line mark with milk, and I like to use the macadamia nut milk. One, I like the flavor. Two, there's no carbs in it. No sugar added to this, no sweeteners, and it is 0 carb. So I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of this of the macadamia nut milk. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of chia seeds, and this is a 3 tablespoon little cup. So I'm going to try and fill it roughly 2/3 of the way full. I'm going to add in, let's just do 1 tablespoon, because I think 2 tablespoons would be a lot. 1 tablespoon of pumpkin, and this is monk fruit extract that came in a bag. That kind of drives me crazy, so I put it in a jar. It's a little easier to access in a jar. Now that I have this in here, I bought one of these little handy dandy whisk thingies, and so far I kind of love it. I also want to add in a little bit of vanilla. You can use your own, whatever vanilla you want to, or really any flavoring. Almond flavoring is really good in here. I just have a McNess pumpkin pie flavoring. I'm going to add just a little bit of that into there, and I do like the flavor of it, so I'm not shy with it. And I'm going to let that rest. If I need to add more milk, I can. It could just be perfect just like that. Don't forget to add a little bit of salt to it. The salt has electrolytes, and I use Pink Himalayan salt or Redmond's Real Salt. Any of those salts that still have all of the natural minerals in it, and that will add to the nutritional value of that. So I think we're going to start with 1 tablespoon. My hope is to figure out how many tablespoons makes 1/4 cup. So I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of this, and then I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of water, just to start the constitution. And it is like thick, thick, thick. Like it's not even taking all that water. This is super absorbent, which that kind of makes me happy. So there's 2 tablespoons, because I love zucchini powder to do stuff like chaffles, to use it in place of coconut flour. If I could use that pumpkin flour in place of the coconut flour or the zucchini powder, ooh, that just opens up another world of yum. So that's 2 tablespoons, and that is a very thick puree. I'm gonna try 3 tablespoons. That is 3 tablespoons, which is still a thick puree. And it probably needs just a hair of, it still has more room for absorption. So there's 4 tablespoons of water to 1 tablespoon of pumpkin powder. So far, it's a 1-to-4 ratio. That's crazy. That's kind of the consistency that I'm looking for, that a little bit more like a soup, like a pumpkin puree. It's like I just pulled it off the pumpkin and cooked it and pureed it. Okay, so for this next part, I want to do a cream cheese, kind of like, you know, when you have pumpkin bread or pumpkin pie, you put whipped cream on it. Well, I love cream cheese with some of my pumpkin pie, like a pumpkin pie muffin with cream cheese frosting. So I softened this in the microwave just a little bit, because I wasn't originally planning on doing this. But I thought, what the heck, let's try it. Might as well take you along with me on the experiment, right? So I'm going to whip up some of this cream cheese. I'm going to add a little bit of, this is Lakanto powdered sugar, or powdered monk fruit sweetener with erythritol. I would just use a monk fruit, but I need a little bit of body in here. So I'm just going to try a teaspoon of this. I don't want it ultra sweet. I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla. And really, I could add some pumpkin to this too and make it extra pumpkin-y, but I'm going to keep it simple. You could add a little cinnamon to this if you like a little extra flavor. There's my pumpkin chaffles, and they smell amazing. So at this point, you could eat it as a sandwich, or you could eat it as an open face. I think I'm going to make this into two and share one of these with my mom. She would probably appreciate that. You could top this with some pecans. Okay. So those are just a few ways you can use pumpkin powder. Those are just a couple ways you can use pumpkin powder. I love, I've done this once before and I enjoyed having it. We used it a lot in our smoothies. We're kind of getting to the tail end of it, and I think my mom mixed it with some powdered kale that I do as well, so that when she added the stuff to her smoothies, it would just already be mixed. Thank you for joining me on this adventure of a fork in the loaf. I will see you next time. Don't forget to hit subscribe, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Thank you.